We went over the terms yesterday for the first chapter. Now we'll go over the questions. So we're on page 23 in the booklet. Again, this is nothing earth-shattering. This is just reviewing what we did in the class. But when you have to answer a question and put it down, it becomes more clear. So, why is the first request? I'm doing number one, Bishmon Esrei, for wisdom, for das. How do you explain it? Why is the first thing we're asking for is for the wisdom? After that, everybody's afraid to give the answer. What? Thank you very much. What? Right, but the question is why? Why is that the first thing?
Because we need to have
brains.
First of everything, we need to have chokhmah.
Say it in Hebrew, but why? Why is there a chirashon?
Because we can't say sorry if we don't know.
Okay.
So we realize what's the word on the phone.
What?
So we realize what's the word.
You said we can't say sorry, and you say we can't realize what to work on.
So that we realize what we have to work on.
But we have to work on, right? So that refers to one specific bracha. What about, why is this something which precedes all the brachas?
So that you know what you're asking for. And like you ask for the knowledge so that you should know what you want and what you're.
Right. Generally speaking, we have an opportunity, unique, or in the chamber of the Melech, we can ask for whatever we want. So the first question we ask for, one of the riddles I used to ask little children was, if you could make one wish, only one single wish, nothing else, what would that be? Anyone remember it from their younger days?
1,000
What?
like
Right. The one wish would be I should have the opportunity to make 1,000 wishes. Because what if I miss it? Okay. You have to have, the first thing is I need something, a key that's going to enhance and help me with everything I'm going to ask for. So the key is to have the wisdom and the understanding to know what I really need, what I'm lacking. So being that Shemon Esrei specifically deals with Dakas Hara, that which is more subtle, it's not so black and white, it's not so obvious, it's not that pronounced. So we need a special bracha. First thing is we should have das to be able to recognize and find what it is that needs to be corrected. Because all the brachas, whether it's refuah, whether it's the other things, whatever is lacking begashmi is because something's lacking beruchnius. So I need the das to know what's lacking and how to correct it, and then all the brachas will be fulfilled. But the first thing is to recognize that everything that's lacking begashmi is what's the reason it's lacking beruchnius, then I can correct it. Number two, what is the difference spiritually between a sword and a bow? Obviously, it's similar to the difference begashmi is.
The sword is for something that's close to you, and the bow is for something that's far.
And what is a beruchnius?
I don't remember the term.
Okay.
What is sword and bow?
Sword is a cherev, bow is a keshet.
Keshet is for the things that you don't know that you're doing it. They're so subtle, you don't realize that you're doing something bad. So it's in order to reach those things.
Right.
To be able to fix.
So begashmi is a sword is for the enemy that's close, and the bow and arrow is for the enemy that's far. Ruchnis, it means the ra, the negativity in me that's close, means that it's obvious. And I see it very clearly. The one that's far, which means I have to look much harder and concentrate until I'll see it, because it's more subtle. And for that, we need the bow and arrow. The next question is, what is the difference between Gasara and Dakusara? Okay, the whole Maimon, we've been talking about that.
The kutara is more view,
Right,
more details, no?
yeah. I guess in English, the word is that it's more subtle. It's not, the bullet, kokach, it's nothing what stands out. And in order to notice it, you have to pay much more attention. What is the spiritual meaning of the bracha of Geula, Refuah, and Baruch Hashanah? How does he explain that each one of these brachas have a deeper meaning? So Geula means to be freed from captivity. What does it mean, Baruchnius?
Free from the nefesh Bahamas.
Right. The nefesh Elikis is held captive by the nefesh Bahamas. To free myself from that jail. What's the bracha for refuah? Why does that bracha for refuah follow that?
So you need to heal from your captivity.
Right, now, even though I'm out, I still need to be healed from the effect that it had, the long-term effect that it had on me. So I need to be healed from that. And the third bracha is Baruch Hashanim, we're asking for the field to give good crop. What is that alluding to? Baruchnius. So it said, after I free myself from the Nefesh and Bahamas and I heal myself, now I'm asking for bracha that all the Torah and the mitzvahs that I do should produce fruits. In other words, it should all be successful in accomplishing what I need to with the Torah and mitzvahs. Then we have number 7. Why do we say Hashamnu after Shemini Esrei? Wouldn't it be more appropriate to say it before Shemini Esrei?
After we realize like that we realize more of what we need to work on.
Right, the subtle things.
Yeah.
In other words, only after I rise to a higher level, I climb higher on the mountain spiritually, that's when I start recognizing and feeling what I'm lacking, which is more subtle. Initially, I don't even notice it. Everything looks like it's okay. But as I start growing and advancing and reaching higher heights in my spirituality, that's when I start feeling the lack. So on a personal level, it means when I daven Shemini Esrei, which is the highest point of the davening, that's when I become aware of the dakus hara, the subtle things. And that's why we say Shemini Esrei, after Shemini Esrei, Hashamnu. Yeah.
Right, I heard that. That's the reason why we say 10 videos on Yom Kippur, right? Because after the first video, we climb to a higher level and we have a whole new set of things to tshuva for. And
Right. So it means after the first time I'm doing tshuva on things that before it didn't really matter, it wasn't even noticeable, it wasn't in a certain sense, wasn't relevant. And every time as we go higher, we have to do that again, right? So what would you say would be the main point of this period? So actually in the mimer itself, at the end there's a kitzur. You see on top of the page, number 4, there's a kitzur. Kitzur means a synopsis, a summary. And very often, when you look at the kitzur that the Rebbe wrote, it becomes much more clear what was the main point of this chapter. And let's see what it says here in the kitzur. On top of page 100. Yuvayir, in this chapter, he explains that the word Bekashti is Shemona Esrei. Yud Beis brachas, the 12 brachas, hey Bakashis, Mili HaChesrenis, Beruchnis. The Bekashti is the same word as Bakashis, requests. I'm asking Hashem to fulfill all those things that I'm lacking spiritually. And then, B'derech Mamela, Mistaking Gam Begashmis. If I correct whatever's lacking spiritually, then automatically, naturally, this will correct things that are lacking begashmis. K'may b'zman habayis, Gashmius fluya beruchnius, because Gashmius is a result of the ruchnius, and therefore, if we correct that, then the Gashmius will be corrected. We all know this was what was very well known when people would come to the Rebbe and basically ask for bracha for something begashmi. Somebody's sick, someone doesn't feel well, someone's losing his parnasa, someone's having a problem with shalom bayis. The Rebbe wouldn't just tell them, be a better Jew. He would point out to a specific mitzvah very often that they should do something with mezuzah, do something with tefillin, do something with kashrus, taras hamishpacha, which means when you know the general idea that everything begashmis is a result of what's lacking baruchnius, and that a Rebbe has even more perception. He could perceive and understand and know what it is baruchnius that's causing this lack of begashmis. Very often, this happened. A lot of these stories were printed. There are a lot of stories where people make their personal testimonies that happened to them, how they got an answer to check the tefillin or the mezuzahs. And not only did they find that there was something wrong, but whatever it is was wrong with the tefillin and the mezuzah was related to what they were suffering from what was going on. I mean, there are many stories, but I'll tell you a personal story that I was there. I went to attend a family wedding in Baltimore. This is like maybe 25, 30 years ago. And it's not a Chabad community. And from here, a whole group of people, family people came out there. So there were some little interesting comments here and there. And someone made some negative comments. So another person from that community said, take it easy, don't speak negatively about Chabad. And then this is what he said, I'll tell you a story that happened with me. My daughter, with a little girl, had an ear infection. It was very painful. Went to the doctor, did the regular routine, gave antibiotic, didn't help. The pain got worse. Gave a different antibiotic, it didn't help. The pain got worse. Gave another antibiotic, it didn't help, and the pain got worse. And she even started to lose her hearing. Anyway, the doctors began to panic because they said that this is an infection. It's such a stubborn infection, and they can't get rid of it with antibiotic. And this is in the air, and God forbid, this could move closer to the brain, and God forbid it could do, could God forbid be life-threatening. What did they suggest? I mean, obviously it was a very serious situation. They suggested to cut out the part of the ear with the infection in order to save her. Of course, that was something which he didn't want to do. And a friend of him said, why don't you write to the Rebbe? He wrote to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said to check the mezuzah of the girl's room. He checked the mezuzah of the girl's room, and I think it was the word V'hayim Shamaya. If you will listen, first words in the Shema. So that there was something wrong with that word.
Wow.
He didn't go to a sefer to correct it. He went and bought a new mezuzah, hung up a new mezuzah in her room. And that same day, he said, the pain started to subside. He took her back to the doctor. The doctor's examining her. And then he says to me, this is what the person says, is this the same child you were bringing all along? He says, yeah, this is the child. I'll show you all the bills. So he says, the reason why I'm asking is, I don't know how it just suddenly stopped, but usually even after an infection is gone, there are scars left that you can tell that there was an infection. There's no scars, there's nothing, it's totally gone. So this was his experience with the Rebbe, and many stories like that. And that means there's something, not just general, but something specific that's lacking spiritually, and that caused something specific lacking begashmis. And that's where the Rebbe would point out to certain people, this person would tell them kashrus, this person would say give more tzedakah, this person, the Rebbe would say, even mezuzah, there were times where the Rebbe would say check the mezuzah, and the times where the Rebbe would say check how the mezuzah is fixed onto the doorpost. There must be something wrong with that. Recently, there was a video, you see somebody walking by with the dollars, and it says to the Rebbe, I asked the Rebbe a certain request, The Rebbe told me to check the mezuzah, which I did, and everything is okay. And I told the Rebbe told me to check a second time, and everything's okay. And then he said, I did it a third time. So the Rebbe said, something is not right, just check it again. And then he found there was a certain, the person tells the story later, he found there was a certain door that they didn't think it needed a mezuzah, and they found out it needed a mezuzah. So in other words, if you're in a higher level, you can actually see what's connected. But all of us could understand and have the amunah that Gashmis is a result of Ruchnis. Then it goes on to say that the synopsis of this ois is to explain that a sword kills the enemy that's close, and a bow and arrow kills the enemy that's far. And then he goes into the order of the brachas and Shemona Esrei. How first we're asking for das, and then we're asking for assistance to do tshuva, Hashem's forgiveness, geula, mezenis, and then he explains why we say vida after Shemona Esrei. So the main point, because remember I told you that the main point of this mimer is, as we'll soon see, to describe what is this war that takes place during davening, and why do we need 5 different weapons to go to war with. So in essence, over here, he explained 2 of the weapons. What's the sword and what is the keshes, the bow and arrow. So one part is accomplished with Kriya Shema, that's like the sword. And the more finer negativity, the more subtle negativity, that's something which we accomplish with the bow and arrow, and that's Shemona Esrei, percussion. Now let's continue. In this spiritual war, the war to push away the ra, the negativity in me. The hachris is unikas haklipas, and to cut off the sustenance that klipas get. I'm assuming everyone knows this, but I'll just spell it out. This term, unikas haklipas, is a term that's found in Chassidus, and it means the nourishment of the klipas. In other words, where does klipa, where does things that are evil, where do they get their sustenance from? How could they exist? Everything comes from Hashem. Hashem is kedusha. Hashem is pure. Where does something impure come from? And the answer is, things that are impure get their sustenance from Hashem, just like things that are pure. But how does that make sense? So the answer is that Hashem gives them chayes, because Hashem wants klipa to exist, but it comes to them in a very, very concealed way. In other words, kedusha is a place where Hashem is revealed. Klipa is a place where Hashem is concealed. So the life flow goes through a process of tzimtzum, is very much hidden, and only after it's hidden, then they could have some degree of sustenance. A little bit like begashmis, that where would you find all sorts of negative things, whether it's infection, whether it's bugs, insects, things that you don't want to have around. It's where it's dark and where it's filthy. That breeds all these kind of things. Spiritually, there's a spiritual darkness, and that allows klipa to exist. But then the question is, so why are we making such a commotion and saying that when I do an Aveira, I'm giving more life to klipa? Hashem created klipa. And the answer is, Hashem created klipa, but gave them a minimum, limited amount of sustenance, a limited amount of life, because they have a purpose to fulfill. And their purpose is that there should be free choice in general. That's the purpose of klipa. When I do an Aveira, what I'm doing is I'm giving additional life and sustenance to klipa and making them much stronger than they would be on their own. I mean, take for example, in Israel, we're very tolerant, and we have Arabs living in Israel. Okay, so it's fine. We work it out together. But if somebody would say, well, let me give them guns, and let me give them ammunition, let me give them weapons, that means you're giving them something which starts to make it dangerous and risky. So if they're there in a certain limited way, in a restricted way, we could live peacefully. But if you're going to give them too much opportunity that they could do something destructive, then this is counterproductive. Klipa was created for a certain purpose, and Hashem gives klipa a certain amount of chayes. And when I do an Aveira, I'm giving them more chayes. When I do tshuva, or I do baruchnis, things the way they should be, I'm cutting off that extra chayes that they have. So this is one of the first things it says in Tanya. It's in chapter 4. But the Alter Rebbe says that Klippa gets its sustenance from us. When we do an Avera, we give them life. So here we have these 5 weapons. What's the source for this? Yesh b'derech prat. To be more specific, there's Chamisha Kli Zayim. 5 weapons. Hamanuyim b'Mishnah. It's found in the Mishnah Daled of Perek Vav the Shabbos. I made a copy. I think it's here in the back, just so we can see the source. The Mishnah is a Mishnah in Masechta Shabbos, and it's talking about the laws of Shabbos. Yeah, look at page 40. How does this have to do with Shabbos, weapons? Because Shabbos is not allowed to carry. So there's a question, halachically, is one allowed to carry a weapon? Is that considered carrying, or is it considered like the garments that I'm wearing? So here's a Mishnah. It's a copy of the Art Scroll, so it's English translation, and it says like this: a man may not go out into public domain, Rishus Rabbim, not with a sword, not with a bow, not with a shield, and not with an olah. We'll soon see what olah is, and not with a spear. So why does he mention these 5? There are other weapons. So obviously, from a Torah perspective, even though there are other weapons, these 5 are the main weapons, and the other weapons would be considered weapons that are sort of under these 5 categories. They're not just 5 weapons. They describe 5 categories of weapons. I mean, just to use this as an example, today, most of the time when people go to war, they don't use bow and arrows. I checked it out. They don't use bow and arrows. They use missiles. Would missiles be compared to a sword or bow and arrow? It's not in the Mishnah anything about missiles. But once we understand the difference that a bow and arrow is something that reaches out far, so obviously missiles would go under the category of bow and arrow. So whichever kind of ammunition, whichever kind of weapon you could think of, it would probably fall under one of these 5. But according to Torah, these are the 5 categories. And now he's going to explain how these 5 weapons are used in the personal war with the Nefesh Bahamas. So this is Sayif. Sayif is another word for sword. Keshes, Teris. Teris is a shield. Olah, Reimach. Also see Olah is a club, a stick. And Reimach is a spear. Starts with the first, Sayif hu Cherev. Inyan is connected to the pasuk. We say this pasuk in davening. Reimach is Kael begroinam, the Cherev pifi is biyodam. We don't remember exactly. We can look up here where the pasuk is. It's on page 34, as we have it in pasuk in Tikkun. Reimus keil b'groinam. I exalt Hashem in my throat, or they exalt Hashem in their throat, and then it says, "The cherev pifi is biyodam." They have a double-edged sword in their hand. So that means that the in of a sword, a double-edged sword, is something that's used in the war against Klippa. Keshes, we just said, is about Koshes L'Shmoin Esser. These are the requests of Shmoin Esser. What's Olam? So again, the Cherev we explained before, that's Kriya Shema. The Keshes is Shmoin Esser. And now he's going to the third one, Olam. My Olam. The Gemara asks, what's Olam? It's not a common word. The Gemara answers kulpa. And kulpa humakel lirders. It's a stick to beat the Eitzara with a stick. What does this mean? The pasuk kibitvarim le'yivasar eved. You can't rebuke an eved with words, which means that the Nefesh Bahamas, there are times that words alone aren't enough. It needs to be beaten with a stick. Like there's a saying in Chazal, that Hashem beats the wicked with a stick. Why does he use a stick? Again, it's metaphoric language, but it means with harshness and with strictness and with judgment. Wicked people are compared to a kelev. Shnemar, David HaMelech says in Tikkun, Yeshuvu le'erev Yemu kakelev. He was talking about his enemies, those who tried to kill him, and they're searching for him all day long. They come back at night, and they're disappointed that they couldn't find him, and they're barking like dogs. So the Yahweh Melech is comparing the Rishayim, the wicked people, to a dog. And the Medrash says, Kashem Shadar Keshal Kelev. Luka is b'makel, just like a dog. Sometimes you have to hit him with a stick. In other words, if a dog gets angry and is ready to jump at you and bite you, you can't say, hello, let me explain you something. It's not nice. It's not the way you do things. We do business differently. There's a time where the only way and the only thing the dog will sort of understand is when he sees the stick. So Rishayim are also in such a state that the only thing that can work is with a stick. We'll soon see what that means. Is the Medrash, why, what is the, we're just saying a dog, that's just throwing a name out there. There's a specific reason. It says in Medrash, Rishayim ein b'reshus liba, but tzadikim liba b'reshus. The difference between Rishayim and tzadikim are, tzadikim, their heart is in their hands. They're totally in control of their heart. Rishayim is the opposite. They are in the hands of their heart. In other words, a rosh is a person that his heart controls his life. And he's almost like a slave to his temptations, to his desires, to his impulses, whatever he wants to do. He doesn't have the control. He wants it, he does it. A tzaddik is a person that's totally disciplined, and he only does what is right to do. He will not do something which is wrong to do. So he's totally in control of his heart. But a Russia, the heart controls him. What does this mean? What does it mean the heart is in his hands? That he has the moyach, the brain, controlling the heart. One of the things it says in Tanya is that Hashem created us in a way that naturally, this is not a miracle, it's not some sort of a spiritual unique thing, it's a gashmizik thing. The Eibishter created a human being that the brain controls the heart. The heart feels like it's much stronger because when a person wants something, he feels it's irresistible, he must have it, he can't be without it. But the truth is that the brain could control the heart. Ukamaimer, like it says in Pirkei Avos, who is considered a giber, a mighty, strong person, not the one who conquers the city, but the person who conquers his Yetzer Hara. Which means that no matter how strong that temptation is, no matter how strong that desire is, if I want to, I can have my mayach, my brain, controlling it. Everyone knows the famous story with the Alter Rebbe's Chassid, but being that it's relevant here, I'll just repeat it again, especially that we're in the month of Kislev. So the Alter Rebbe was nostalgic on Chavdalat Tevis, and that his passing, Alter Rebbe's passing, was connected to the war that took place between Russia and France. And a lot of details to that story, which we'll talk about when the time comes in Tevis. But one of the details of that story was that the Alter Rebbe was determined that Russia win the war and Napoleon be defeated. The Alter Rebbe said if Napoleon would win, the whole world would be poisoned with his ideas which go against Hashem and against belief in Hashem and so on. So the Alter Rebbe did whatever he did spiritually, but in addition to doing whatever he did spiritually, he did another thing. He appointed a chassid, whose name is Rabbi Majeski, and he became a spy for the Russian army. And not only he became a spy, he was actually very instrumental in helping them in the war. So instrumental that as a result of that, the Alter Rebbe was given tremendous privileges from the Russian government, given tremendous honor. They gave the Alter Rebbe and the Mitzvah Rebbe, all the Rebbes of Chabad had a certain sort of badge of honor as a result of this. So he said that what I learned by the Alter Rebbe, and he called it the Aleph, like the ABC of Chassidus, saved my life. And that is that the Mayach Shalat Alev, that the mind controls the heart. And the mind determines how I'm going to feel in the heart. And therefore, he worked on it and he mastered this union of the heart being controlled by the brain. How did it save his life? It saved his life because there was a few times that the French army planned an attack, and nobody knew about it except for the top people in the army, the top generals. And at the last moment, it didn't work out because apparently somebody tipped off the Russian army. They knew about this plan. That means there's a spy amongst them, and they couldn't figure out who is the spy. Who was it? It was actually Rabbi Majeski. Why? His job was to, how did he get into the army? He offered his services as a translator. He knew French and knew Russian. They had to translate documents. They had to translate different material that they found needed. So he was the one that translated or wrote for them French to Russian, Russian to French. And therefore, he was sitting and writing his things. But in essence, he was listening to their conversations and he knew what was being planned. But they had no clue that this chassid would even be involved in that. Just thought he's a chassid, he's going to write and translate. One day he was sitting and the generals were sitting in one part of the room making their plans. He was sitting in the other part of the room translating something from one language to the other. And all of a sudden the door flies open and Napoleon himself walks in. When Napoleon walks in and sees him, the first thing he says is, he's the spy. He accused him of being the spy. In other words, what are you doing here? What is someone like this doing in this room? And right away he said he must be the spy. As soon as he said these words, he put his hand on his heart, on the chassid's heart, to see how fast it's beating. Because if he's guilty, it's going to be beating much faster. Of course, if he wasn't guilty, it'd still be beating pretty fast. But I guess if he wasn't guilty, it would be 100 miles an hour. And if he was guilty, it'd probably be 200 miles an hour. It's like a lie detector test, the same idea. Put his hand on his heart to see how fast it's beating. So the chassid said, because we were so well trained by the Alter Rebbe, that the mind controls the heart. Not only my heart didn't beat extra fast because he was guilty, he controlled his heart that it should beat like as if nothing was happening. He took his hand off and he said, like this guy is clueless, forget it, he's definitely not the spy, and he walked off, but that saved his life. That's a high level, but every person could have the mind control the heart, at least on a practical level, that no matter how strong of a desire, how strong I have a ratzon to do something, nevertheless, if the mind wants to, it could control the person for not doing it. That's the way it's supposed to be. Shlitas ha-meichen ala midas. The meichen, the intellect, controlling the midas, the emotion. The kfayaloin, to subdue them. Sheyu midas misnagis api ha-seichel. The midas should conduct themselves according to seichel. The seichel paylo bitl b'hamidus. Intellect is able to bring bitl to the midas, that the midas should be sort of subservient to the seichel. By the way, this is also the inyan of washing our hands. We wash our hands, nagavasa. We wash our hands before eating bread. So Chassidus, there are Maimarim that explain that water represents Chokhmah. In many places, we find that water represents Chokhmah, the intellect. The hands are the midas, and we know the right hand is Chesed, the left hand is Gevura. And Chesed and Gevura are the general midas that include all the midas. Washing and pouring the water over my hands, what's behind it? It's pouring my seichel, my intellect, over my midas, that they should refine the midas. My midas should conduct themselves according to the seichel, not the way midas want. And the same is here with Aaron. When Aaron lit the menorah, basically the menorah is 7 branches, 7 candles, and we all know what the number 7 usually stands for. The 7 midas, the emotional attributes. And Shemen, oil, represents Chochmah. So when he put on the oil and he lit the candles, basically, as we know that the Beis HaMikdash was the generator of the whole world, the whole universe, all the worlds. And whatever happened, they affected all the worlds. So the power that Seichel should be able to control the Midas came from the Beis HaMikdash, from Aron HaKohen lighting the 7 branches, the 7 candles in the menorah. Shaydei zeh mizbareres mizacheches hamidus. Idea bittul shalahem. By the midas being bottled to the seichel, midas recognizing that the intellect is higher than them, and that the emotions should conduct themselves according to the guidance and according to the understanding of the seichel, then the midas will go in the right direction. That's people who are tzaddikim, people who are in the right place. Mashenk are the rishoyim, but when you talk about rishoyim, b'shus libam, which means not only ein hameir shalat alalev, not only that the seichel is not controlling the emotions, adarabah, just the other way around. The ikra alev, the emotions control the seichel. What does it mean by the emotions controlling the seichel? Basically, we find that when people do things that are wrong, and we know what they're doing is just to fulfill their taivas, fulfill their desires, their lust that they have, it comes along with an explanation that what they're doing, how noble it is, and how beautiful it is, and how this is right, and this is cultural, and this is progressive, all sorts of explanations for everything that they do, which means I have a taiva, really, I have a desire to do something just for the purpose of pleasure, and it has an effect that it affects the way I think. So instead of the brain controlling the heart ends up controlling the brain. Again, the mashal that's the most powerful mashal in our generation, even though it's a painful mashal, but the Germans, the Nazis, when they did what they did, they were supposedly intelligent people, and they were people who were cultured people, progressive people, and they were the people who had the universities and intellectuals and enlightened. And yet they did things so animalistic, like beasts and animals, it's beyond human comprehension how people could have done what they did. And yet they had a philosophy that justified everything they were doing. It made sense to them that this is the right thing to do because that's what they wanted to do. So how is that connected to a kislev? The word kislev is as if it's made up of 2 words. Kulei leiv, it's all heart. I mean, in general, that's the difference between a human being and an animal. Humans have intellect and emotion, and animals also have intellect and emotion. And the difference is not just that the intellect in a human being is greater than the intellect of an animal. It has more, intellectual capacity. It's not just quantity. It's a different kind of an intellect. The intellect of the animal is really almost like an extension of its emotion. An animal is all emotion in general. But in order for an animal to be able to fulfill its emotional needs, that's where the intellect comes into the picture. Like, where do you find intellect by an animal? You see the animal doing something smart in order to save its life, how to catch another animal, to run away from a hunter, and all these kind of things, which means that primarily the animal functions by emotion. And there are times where the intellect comes into the picture to enhance its emotional pursuits. But a human being is supposed to be the opposite. There's the intellect that tells me what to pursue, how to pursue, which direction to take. And the emotion enhances the intellect. But a kislev is kulei leiv. It's as if to say it's totally and completely all emotion. And that's what defines a rosh. And he's going to explain a little bit later, that's why it needs a stick. If it's all emotion, then logic is not going to help. It's like talking to the walls. Who are you talking to? There's nobody home. It's all emotion. And it's like when you're mad, when you see someone who's, let's say, in having let's say, what you see with children, for example. I don't know if you ever had the schus to see a kid throw a tantrum. And they're on the floor and they're banging their feet on the floor and they're turning blue in the face and they're screaming and shouting and the mother is pleading with the child and the father is screaming at the child, and it's all, you gotta wait till it unwinds. There's no one to talk to, nobody home. And that's what it means, kulei leiv. And that's why sometimes all you can do, especially with an animal, is to use a stick. So with the rosh, that's what the Eibishter says, that he has to use a stick, like pare, because because it became all emotion. In Yidua, it's known. No, Sherish Inyan. Where's the root for this? We just finished saying that everything physical is a result of something spiritual. So this in itself, that there are two types of people. One that the intellect controls the emotion, and one where the emotion is the primary thing, also has its spiritual roots. And these are the two worlds of Olam Toyo and Olam Tikkun. Olam Toyo is a world where we saw the emotion was the stronger component, and Olam Tikkun is the world where the intellect is a stronger component. And I was going to explain the difference between the world of Toyo and the world of Tikkun. We spoke a little bit about this in the previous Maimer, and here we'll talk a little bit more about the difference. Is everybody here going, anybody here going to the level 1 of Halacha? Yeah? Only you? Anyone? Okay, because the Halacha teacher of this class is not here. So I'm going to continue a little bit longer. And if you want, you're welcome to stay. And if you want, you're welcome to go to the Halacha class. Halacha is Halacha, yeah. So there's a little bit more, then maybe we'll talk a little bit about chodesh, kislev. And then we'll finish a little bit earlier because it is Rosh Chodesh and there's more davening today. We do Halo, we do Musaf, and so we'll get a little extra time at the end. Let's just do a little bit. The root of this spiritually, Yadua Hepesh B'chlal Ben Elam HaToyo Elam HaTikkun. So we know that there's a Elam, a world that's called the world of Toyo. In that world, there was Shviras HaKelim, the vessels broke. We learned about it in the Maimer of Matoivu. And these broken vessels, of course, it's all in metaphoric language. It descended to this world. And these are all the sparks that are found in the physical world, which we have to elevate. And through that, we can rebuild the world of Toyo that was destroyed. So there are many Maimarim in explaining what happened in the world of Toyo. Why did the vessels break? How come everything exploded? One thing is for sure, and that is it's not that Hashem created a world and then something just didn't work out and it exploded. Chas v'shalom. Hashem initially created a world in a way that it should fall apart. It's part of a plan. And the question is, how did it fall apart and what's the purpose in it falling apart? Obviously, the purpose is for us to rebuild it, because when you have something and it falls apart and we rebuild it, it becomes much stronger than what it was initially, and it becomes that way through our efforts, not through Hashem's creation, but of course, we're the ones who are created by Hashem, and He gives us the power to do what we're doing, but it comes through our avodah. But how did it happen? So last time when we learned the Maimer, we spoke about one of the reasons. And that reason was that the light was too strong for the vessels. And we explained that when the light is very strong, whatever is that's supposed to contain that light breaks because the light is too strong. So here he says something a little bit different. Similar but different. No, I skipped a line. About Toyo, Hayamidis Nefrodes. This is the difference. In the world of Toyo, the midas, the emotional attributes, was separate from the meichin, from the three intellectual attributes. And they didn't have the impact and the effect on the emotions. And that's why the light was so strong. And it was b'chinas anfin mispardim, which means separate branches. When you have a tree and the branches grow, you'll see the branches branch out. Each branch is separate from the other. The initial trunk of the tree is one, but then the branches, one becomes separate from the other. So that's a term that's used in reference to the midas of Tohu, that in the world of Tohu, the midas are not interconnected. In the world of Tikkun, the midas are interconnected. In the world of Toyo, not. And it has to do with the fact that in the world of Toyo, the midas and the light of the midas is very intense. And he explains, Gili HaMoichen, when the intellect shines, Poel Bittul B'Midas, it creates a certain softness in the midas. V'hainu she'hamoichen machlishin es er hamidas. It means that the intellect weakens the intensity of midas. Shelo yiv v'tekel kol kach. And I will explain. K'may ava. Let's take as an example the midah of love. Hanoledes min haseichel. Love that's born out of seichel, which means there's a logical reason that reason leads me to love this person or love this thing or whatever it is. It has to be that the emotion is limited. Being that it's born out of the logic is very specific. So therefore, if I understand that this is valuable, that this is good, so let's say I understand something is worth $100, and that's exciting, so I want it. But the desire that I have for it is sort of $100 worth. And what if I realize something is worth $1 million? Then the desire I have for it and the effort I'll make to get it and everything involved will be so much more because this is worth $1 million, not just $100. So the same is with anything. If I understand something and I understand its value, that means there's a certain limit to what I understand. If there's a limit to what I understand, which is that every logic has some limit, then it leads to a limit of the emotion has to be limited as well. Because the emotion will be kefi hecher chaseichu, as the intellect indicates. So this logic that leads to the emotion will be, the emotion that comes from the logic will be limited in the same way like the logic itself, but not more. Once the midah is something that's limited, it's not just unleashed energy that's unlimited. If it has a limit, then it leaves room for the opposite midah. What happens when there's a clash between two people? I'm one way, the other person's another way. I want things this way, they want things the other way. And that creates a clash between the two people. Clash? They come out clash. What's the word for clash though? That the conflict. מתנגדים אחד לשני, כן. Lama, because we're not leaving room. When something is limited, it leaves room for the other thing, for the other opinion. And if it leaves room for the other opinion, there's a way that they could sort of coexist together. The achash shekolso is pashtus abba yochali is midas hagbur. Like take this room. If you put something in the room that's limited, one table, because the table occupies so much space, there's more room you can put in another table. Same thing with midas. If I have a certain feeling about something, I think things should be done this way. Imagine in a family, you have a father and a mother. And the father believes we're supposed to educate the child this way. And the mother says, no, we have to be softer. The father says we have to be strong. These are two opposite opinions. And that's where there can be a clash. But if my opinion is limited, then I leave room for another opinion, which means this is my opinion, this is your opinion, we can work it out. But if my opinion is unlimited, it's like taking this room and filling it up with furniture from one end of the room to the other end of the room, from the floor to the ceiling. There's no room for any other furniture here. If my midas are unlimited, there's no room for another opinion. There's no room for another way of thinking. And therefore, when I try to put something else here, there's going to be something is going to break. That's what he's saying. That if the midah is limited, it leaves room for another midah. That means wherever the love sort of finishes its limited existence, there can be the midah of gvura. Being that the midas, the emotions, give room one for the other, Mele Yuchalias, not only that they leave room for each other, more than that, they can coexist and they can interact with each other. So here you have the two parents educating the same children, guiding the same children. I'll contribute my chesed, you'll contribute your gvura, and we'll work it out together because there's room for both of us. Even this itself, that we can, the chesed and the gevurah can coexist and work together, is also something which logic dictates. Haseichel mechayev. Logic dictates she'ava tzrichalias mokeves gam gevurah. That love also has to have gevurah, and gevurah has to have love. In other words, it's very clear that if a person is those pure chesed, there's no discipline whatsoever, and you just give everyone without any kind of judgment, then you'll end up giving people and places and things that are dangerous, and chas v'sholem, you're going to lose out more than you're going to gain. So those, I mean, let's say our country, United States of America, Baruch Hashem, we live in this wonderful country. It's a free country. The Rebbe always would refer to America as a malchus shel chesed. But a little bit, the chesed can also go a little bit overboard. To give you an example, it was just recently a big event that happened here in Crown Heights. It was a court case. What was the court case about? Someone, a certain individual, his name was Rabbi Majeski, was walking down the street, and he said to someone who wasn't Jewish, just to be nice and friendly, he said, "Hi, good morning." And then the person started to beat him and choke him, nearly killed him, if not for the fact that someone intervened. He got arrested, police. When they took out his records, this person was 40 times in jail for beating people, harassing people, being violent. But if you're chesed, let him out. He's only a person. Give him a break. Unfortunately, very often when people are found guilty of murder, they find out that they have a record. They were arrested a few times already before for similar things, for attempted murder. But because you're doing chesed, look what happened. So chesed has to have a limit. Logic says that even if you're being chesed, there's still a limit when, where, how, and what way. Otherwise, it becomes counterproductive and it becomes destructive. And the same with the gevurah. You have to have discipline. But if it be pure discipline, then you'll break the other person. It has to come along with chesed. So it means even if you go logically, logic dictates that even if you're chesed, you need gevurah. And even if you're a gevurah person, you have to realize you need chesed. So these two people who contain these two attributes could work together. But when is this? Kishamidus nodas minas seichel. If the midas are born out of seichel. But if the midas don't come from seichel, they're just pure emotion. Kasher seris amida mitzad atzmei, pure emotion. Ozein b'teikev gadol ma'od, and it's with tremendous force. The midas. Ukamaya behema, just like a behema, an animal. Sheyesh la midas to keep us. B'pnei she'ein la seichel lahachlish amida. There's no intellect to soften the midas, and therefore they come with tremendous force. And as a result of that, they can't coexist with another kind of a midah, and they definitely can't sort of merge with another midah. That's impossible because it's so forceful, so much force. So what is it that makes it or breaks it? Whether the midah should be soft or forceful, that's the seichel. So we can call the seichel a midah softener. Okay, it's an ingredient that if you use intellect, then the midas are able to reasonable, calm down, work things out. If there is no seichel, then it's just midas, and then it's dangerous. Something similar happened in the higher spiritual worlds. Of course, we're not talking about people, we're talking about spheres, and it's infinitely higher and different than what happens down here. But the general idea is sort of the same structure. That in the world of Toyo, there were 7 midos, but it was disconnected from the higher level, which is the intellect, Chochmah, Bina, and Das. And as a result of that, the midos were very forceful, and because they were forceful, they couldn't coexist together, and that caused the breakage. What happened in Shviras HaKelim? The world of Tikkun, Hashem created the world in a way that the midos and the meichen were connected. And as a result of that, the midas were softer. As a result of that, there could be the hiskalus, where one includes the other. And we'll learn about this later. This is like we have on the Sfira Sa'imer, that chesed has in it gvura shebechesed, and has in it teferes shebechesed, and netzach shebechesed, and hoyt shebechesed. Each midah contains in it a certain element of the other one, and that's how they all interact together. So we'll stop here, and to be continued. Maybe I should do one more line.
Yeah.
I'll do a few more lines, and we'll stop with someone else. Okay. Because there's been Toyo, something similar to this happened in the world of Toyo. Let's always remember, Toyo is a spiritual world. Not only a spiritual world, it's higher than Atzilus. It's in the realm that's created more to Keser. So it's a very spiritual thing, but we have no choice. We need to use this mushal to understand it. In fact, the mushal with intellect and emotion down here evolves from up there. So from the mushal, we have some idea what went on in the Mailam. The light was very strong, very intense. In fact, it was an infinite intenseness. Take of there was no bittul to meichen, it was disconnected. And because it was so strong, it caused this idea of shvira. The fact that each midah was so strong also caused the midas to be separate from one another. The midas don't include in each other. I want to explain that a little bit to simplify. What does eskalos mean? Eskalos means including. In other words, how could chesed sort of get along with gevura? Is because chesed has a little bit of gevura in them. There are certain people that they can't relate to children. They're not the ones that should be teaching children or working with children because they just can't relate to children. So if you have a little child that's tears in his eyes, crying, and he's crying because he wanted the red balloon and instead they gave him the green balloon. You have some adults that would say, come on, stop, it's not a green balloon, red balloon, what's the difference? And he's crying, I want the green balloon. Why does he want the green balloon? He thinks the deep mystical reason why he wants a green balloon? He doesn't know why. He's just like, he wants green. And it means so much to him to the point of crying. If you can't relate to that, you won't understand the child and you can't help the child and you can't be sensitive to him. And many other things that children have certain needs. That means, Baruch Hashem, I was once a child, so I know a little bit what a child is like and I could relate to it. And as a result of that, in other words, there's something in me which has that element. And as a result of that, I can understand the child. But if I have nothing, if I can't relate to that, there's no way I can relate to the child. Or the same as with chesed and gemura. If you have a person that's kulei chesed, all chesed, that has no concept of gemura, no breaks, no discipline, nothing, they can't understand the person who's gemura. It just doesn't register. They can't relate to it. Not a lot, and not a little, not even one iota of gemura. They just can't relate to that kind of approach. So the only way that they could is if I have a little bit of gemura in me, if I have a little bit of netzach in me, a little bit of yisoid in me, so I can relate to someone who's that kind of personality. And that's really I would say, the most crucial thing in a relationship, that even if people think that if two people are different, there's going to be a problem. It's not true. It's not true. If only marriages that will work out is two people that are carbon copies of each other, there'd be maybe 2-3 marriages in the world that are happily married. What's the difference is not what makes the problem. The problem is that there's a difference and I can't relate to something that's different than me. That's when there's a problem. But the fact that two, like you say in English, we can agree to disagree. The fact that there's someone different, if I could relate to it and understand it, then we can work together, not a contradiction. So in the world of Toyo, there wasn't this concept that chesed has in it, gevura, teferes, netzach, hoyd, yisoid, malchus. Chesed was pure chesed. Gevura was pure gevura. And therefore, pure chesed and pure gevura, there's no way that they can come together. When they come together, there's an explosion. In the world of Tikkun, Hashem created in a way that each sphere contains the others. So because the chesed has in it gevura, it can relate to gevura. And because gevura has in it a pinch of chesed, it can relate to chesed. And that's how the spheres interact with each other. So what is it that does this? The connection to the intellect. The intellect softens the emotions and allows the emotion to intellect and include one another. Mashen came to Tikkun, in the world of Tikkun, which is Atzilus, Hashem created a way, miyat, which means that the light of the midas are not so strong. But this is not a disadvantage, this is an advantage because it's not so intense and it's not strong, sort of infinite force. Therefore, it's b'chinas kalos. There can be this inclusion where one includes the other. And in hamiyut, haynu b'chinas achlishu shenasa b'adei shema. So here he brings in a little bit of Kabbalah, but if you read the next few words, you'll see that it's one Kabbalah term after another. Sha'ikrin Tikkun, sha'idei shema chodesh, ha'yetzu mitzcha da'ak, sha'ze'em pasachal yo, shema melagav di erech hatzilus. To translate this in simple English, it means intellect. Hashem's intellect, Meichen.
Shema is Meichen?
It's, yeah. How do you spell the word Chochma? Chov Ches Ma. Koyach Ma. The name Ma, you know what the name Ma is, right? Shema. Not Shema. There's 4 ways how to spell Hashem's name, which means Hashem's name has 4 letters, Yud, K, Vav, K. But there are 4 different ways how to spell the word Yud, the letters Yud, K, Vav, K. So one of the ways of spelling it is such a way that the gematria will be 45. So if you write Yud, K, Vav, K like this, Yud, Vav, Dalet, that's 20. The Hey, you spell Hey, Aleph. That's 6. Then you have another Hey is another 6, so 20 and 12. Am I doing it right? No, it's an Aleph. Hey, Aleph is 6, and 6 is 12. 12 and 20 is 32. And then the 2 Vavs is another 12. Vav, Vav. How do you spell the word Vav? Vav, Vav is another 12. 22 and 12 is how much? 44. And then there's an Aleph in the middle, so that is 45. Confusing? Okay. Let me do this. 1 second. Let me just show you. I'm not going to spell out Hashem's name because we have to erase it. But, okay, the Yud we all know is 20. Yud, Vav, Dalet. Now the Hey, you spell the Hey like this. Hey, Aleph. That equals 6. Another one like this equals 6. How do you spell the Vav? Vav, Aleph, Vav. It reads Vav. And that equals 13. So now let's add it up together. 6 and 6 and 3, 12 and 3 is 15. And don't forget on top here is the Yud, which is 20. 3, 15. 2 is 3, 4. That is Mem Hey, 45. Mem Hey is 45. Shema. You still don't get it? You don't see?
I see.
Okay. Tomorrow, I have this on a sheet. Lena, I'll bring it with me the next time we have the class to show you all the phonics. So one of them, the gematria will be 52. The third one, the gematria will be 63. And the fourth one, the gematria will be 72. It just depends how you spell the vavs and the hates. If you spell it this way, then it's going to be a gematria of 45. And 45, Shema, refers to, it alludes to the intellect. This other name, Shem Ban, the next one is 52. Ban, Beis Nun. 52 alludes to the emotions. To add a little bit of salt and pepper, Shema is the gematria of the word Adam. Shamban is the gematria of the word behemoth. The difference between an Adam and a behemoth is that an Adam has intellect and a behemoth has emotion, as he explains here.
Whoa, it's very interesting. Very good one.
So Chochma is koyach ma, she begins ein a bittul. And the bittul of Chochma, that causes bittul in the midas. The Chochma peila bittul b'midas, gam ken shez ein achlishus, shalahen v'ydeis anasiv miskalvus. So basically, this is the general difference between Adam and Behema, between good midas and destructive midas. If the seichel, the intellect, pours into the midas could be functioning in a healthy way. If there's no seichel pouring into the midas, just pure midas, then it'll be destructive. And in fact, that's why, like I said before, we wash our hands and we do it a few times a day. It's basically a procedure, but gashmis that helps us accomplish baruchnis of the intellect being poured onto the midas. I don't think we'll stop here by these words, where it says, there's a difference between the midas nefshel kiss and the midas nefshel bahamas. So we'll go into that next time. And we'll stop here, so we'll have to take the time a little bit extra to daven a little bit slower, and to say all the extra things in davening today, which is Yalav Yovad, Havel, and Musaf.